You're listening to Bullpen Science with Dr. Richard Aplin, the podcast that gives you real health solutions to your real health problems. And now, your visionary host, Dr. Richard Aplin.
Welcome, everyone. This is Dr. Richard Aplin with Bullpen Science. What you're about to begin is a four-part series, 4 different classes that we did for a local church. I was asked to come do a presentation on stress, and the sheer number of people that showed up for this class was amazing. And what I learned from this was that there is a desire, a need out there for different answers, not your standard answers about ignoring your situation or just medicating your situation, but how actually to get in front of the situation. So we did 4 different classes. Class 1, we talked about chronic low levels of stress and what that can produce. We also talked about brain balance and body balance versus brain imbalance and body imbalance. And then we talked about 3 different kinds of stress. And the 3 different kinds of stress started off with physical, environmental, and then emotional. So class 1 is an overview of the series, and it has some really good information, and I hope you enjoy it. So sit back, enjoy the class, and I'll see you for the next one.
I'm going to open this up in prayer. They told me the last minute, so I didn't prep, so I'm a little stressed, but that's okay. I can run off the event now, so it works out okay. But let's get started. Father God, we thank you for this time, and thank you, God, that you've made us physically, emotionally, spiritually, and you mean those things to connect, and it makes a difference. Just tonight, just learning to relieve some stress and just that won't get other parts out of line. Just be with us. Just you know what we need to hear. Just let's hear that thing tonight that can encourage us. I just thank you for just the opportunity to be here and learn. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you very much. All right. I guess I need to start by giving you a little bit of background on. This has been the oddest year for me because I realized that I've been in practice for 30 years. And, going back, I started practice when I was 10. All right? So I'm only 40. No, but of those 30 years, for the last 15 years, I have been focused on this, stress. I've been involved in developing different technologies. We've developed different strategies. We've tested these. We have research that's ongoing. And stress is something that is being missed, honestly. Because if I ask you, what do you know about stress? What's going to be some feedback? Any of you guys? You have it all the time. Okay, well, that's good. I'm not sleeping. Absolutely. So what if you just had stress all the time? Then your adrenal glands are going to be functioning all the time. And then what happens to that? I mean, after a while you suffer from what? Adrenal exhaustion. Why? Why would you have adrenal exhaustion? Because you've lost the ability to regulate the system. And here's the thing we were talking about this morning in orchestra practice. I asked the question, is your job stressful? Is it? Is your life stressful? Herein lies one of the issues. And this is something that I've been trying to locate a linguist to help me develop a different language. Because the language that we use in discussing stress-related issues is not appropriate. See, the language in medicine is very linear. It's very cause and effect. And when you're talking about stress and how to have the body function at a better and a higher level, you have to come up with a different language. It has to be about possibilities, which is more like what neuroscience is. And so stress and neuroscience really go well together. But the problem is the language. Like, for instance, your job is not stressful. Your life is not stressful. Stress is what you're left with after you have dealt with your job. It's what you're left with after you've dealt with life. And so what makes your job stressful is you, me. All right, because I'm going to be preaching to myself about a lot of this stuff because it's really a daily issue. How you appropriate the body and how it functions and deals with life determines whether or not you're left with something positive or something negative. And most people were left with something negative, and we call that stress. Now, if you buy into that, and it's hard not to because it's all around us all the time, then you're going to be suffering from what I call the victimization of health care. We have a lot of people out there that do not believe that they can do anything about their situation. And so they just wait until it shows up. All right, how long has the process been going on in your body before you have an issue? Years? You know, when's the most common time people decide that they have a heart problem? When they've had a heart attack. Well, is that the first symptom or is that the last symptom? And so the process has been going on for years, but our language really doesn't allow for that. And see, one of the things that I say in the office all the time, there are no processes, or there are no conditions in the human body that do not have a process in front of it. I haven't found one yet. So you can just pick a condition. Migraines, well, it has a process in front of it. Diabetes, it has a process in front of it. Heart disease, process in front of it. Name it. Asthma, eczema, bipolar, schizophrenia. These are all processes in front of these conditions. And as long as you try to manage the condition, what hope do you have of changing the process? Wow, that's completely different. But that's where we have to be if we are going to get in front of stress. Stress is the result of what you do. So change what you do. Now, what you do actually is broken into two pieces. It's what we are actively doing, how we react, and then how we recover. So how many people in here recover well? One of the easiest ways to check is the little stress card. So how many people think the stress card is broken? Your hand temperature is the result of your sympathetics or your defense mechanism and your parasympathetic or your recovery mechanism. All right, you're supposed to maintain what they call an allostatic balance. Like, for instance, mine was really dark blue. And when I came up here and started speaking, and then I waited for about 30 seconds, I went back and checked, and mine was greenish blue. So my hand temperature dropped. Why? Because my cortisol levels went up, my adrenaline went up, because I'm getting ready to speak. Now, I've been speaking with groups for years, and I speak mostly with doctors, and these doctors are from all over the world. And the only time that I really get nervous is around family. I don't get it. But I do. So bear with me, pray for me while I'm doing this. I hope I present this in such a way that will make sense. It'll help you to think of it a little bit different, and I'll give you some of those simple little strategies. So let's get started. The first thing, we're currently in a pre-epidemic phase of what's called brain stress. Now, you've probably never even heard of brain stress. Well, brain stress is real. We're seeing it all over our culture. It says here the average American experiences about 50 brief stress responses each and every day. And 90% of the people today suffer from overstimulation and unresolved sympathetic or reactive activity. The unresolved activity produces what's called sympathetic survival syndrome. How many people are in sympathetic survival syndrome? How many people thought the card was broken? That's how it works. All right, your autonomic nervous system is the nervous system that we're going to be talking about throughout this class. The autonomic nervous system is an automatic nervous system. It's what runs everything. It is broken into two pieces. One side is the reactive side, the other side is the recovery side. If you think about it this way, it really does make sense. Your human body is like an electric motor or a magnetic motor. It's always running. The way you regulate how fast it runs is by applying or taking away brakes. So if I apply the brakes to the system, it slows down. If I take the brakes off the system, it speeds up. If I take the brakes completely off the system, it'll spin so fast something's going to blow. And that's pretty much what I see day in, day out, is it gets to that point. So a condition is the result of the inability of the system to regulate itself by applying or taking away the brakes. If you want to see what it looks like, think about blood pressure. Your blood pressure goes up, your blood pressure comes down. Think about heart rate. Your heart rate goes up, your heart rate goes down. If we did not have this braking mechanism, your heart rate would just go up. Your blood pressure would just go up. So we have to have the braking mechanism. And the braking mechanism is the side that God gave us the most control over. But it's interesting, in my line of work, what I see is that most control is trying to be applied to the reactive system. Through medication, exercise, things like that, we are trying to enhance or deregulate the reactive side of the system. But the reactive side of the system is almost a reflex. So if I walk up behind somebody, I walk up behind you, and I go, boo. All right, what's going to happen? All this stuff's going to elevate. Your heart rate's going to speed up. Your hands are going to get wet. The hand temperatures are going to drop. Your breathing's going to elevate. Your eyeballs are actually going to, the pupils are going to dilate. All of these things are byproducts of the reactive system. In your bloodstream, you're going to get cortisol release. You're going to get adrenaline. All of these things are going to be dumped into your bloodstream. These are all what's called pro-inflammatory products. They're designed to create an atmosphere where we can get a full body response. But see, most people, this is what their life is all the time. So they're always in this reactive mode. Well, if you do that, you're going to wind up with what's called sympathetic survival syndrome. And it may even present itself just like that is doing right now. It's just vibrating, okay? So anyway, let's go back to this. The sympathetic side is strictly for survival. The parasympathetic side is for recovery. Using the mechanisms that God gave you, you can regulate this system in a much better fashion. So when we're trapped, though, in sympathetic dominance, our ability to heal is dramatically reduced. All right? So the next one, it says the overwhelming majority of people that I see day in, day out, including doctors that I work with, they're suffering from what's called chronic, constant, low levels of stress for years. I just read something today from JAMA. It's a new article that just got published, and it's talking about an additional lipid-lowering medication, as if one's not enough. Okay. Why are your lipids up? Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can lower your lipids by exercising your recovery strategies. We do this all the time. So all you need to do is focus on the recovery mechanisms in life after you experience something, and you can self-regulate almost anything. It's not that too far-fetched. But the problem is that the language that we use to describe it really doesn't support it. And so that's the reason why I'm looking for, if anyone's a linguist, I'd love to speak with you, all right, about developing a new language. All right, but this next thing it says, this has produced a sympathetic, parasympathetic imbalance and is absolutely the root cause of all health challenges. So if you have a health challenge, what do you know about it? It's an imbalance in the sympathetic, parasympathetic system. It's an imbalance in the ability of the body to recover from a reactive state. You have high blood pressure. What does that tell you? There was an interesting thing we did over in Atlanta. I was over teaching a bunch of doctors, and I was talking to these scientists, and they're a functional neurologist. And they were telling me about this gentleman that came to see them, and his blood pressure was about 220 over 110, 120. You know, he's about ready to pop, okay? Yeah. So what they did is they worked with his brain, and they found out some strategies that they can incorporate into his lifestyle to change his blood pressure. And so to prove it to him, they put him in this machine, and I'm sure everyone here has seen it. You live in Huntsville. This is NASA Central, and you've seen the little chair where they spin you in all of the different directions. Now, wouldn't common sense say that's the last place you want to put this guy? All right, you do not want to spin this man around. He's going to pop. Well, they spun him around for about 10 minutes, and his blood pressure went to 120 over 82. How did that happen? And so I turned to the scientist, the functional neurologist, and I said, so what does that tell you about blood pressure? And he just grinned because he and I had had conversations before. Blood pressure is a product of the mind. And so high blood pressure is a problem with the sympathetic-parasympathetic balance within the mind. You change that, the blood pressure changes. It's not an issue, what we were originally taught, that it's a problem with the heart and the arteries. It's actually here. It all starts here, and it gets expressed here. That's a different way of thinking, but that's what it takes. So stress creates imbalance in the brain, and then imbalance in the brain creates imbalance in the body. All right, and imbalance in the body can show up as a lot of different things. Asthma, exhaustion, migraines, digestive issues. You know, when I go speak, and I do this even when I speak with the doctors, I like walking around and shaking everyone's hand. And, you know, I am being nice, but I am, you know.
You got a cold hand.
Yeah, right. But there is a reason for doing this, because you can pick out people that have really cold hands. Woo! And then after I shake their hands, then I turn around and ask them, do you have any digestive issues? And did you hear the answer? Yes.
Yeah.
Every person that has cold hands will either have a digestive issue or a reproductive issue, or both. And the reason why is because the same mechanism that regulates blood to the hands is the same mechanism that regulates blood to the digestive system and the reproductive system. Because in the medical text, and I joke with the doctors, I go, apparently you were absent that day, because we did cover it in guidance physiology. All right. And what it says in the textbook is that when you activate the fight or flight mechanism, you will move blood away from the periphery, and you will move it away from the two most energy-consuming systems of the human body, which is digestion and reproduction. So you can shake someone's hand and tell that about them immediately. And so again, how many people had black on their card? You need to do something about it. See, this is what I tell, this is the expression God gave us to know what the heck's going on inside. I mean, think about it. How else are you going to know what's going on? You don't, right? Until something bad happens. But if you know what to look for, like for instance, how many people have really, really dry hands? There are a lot of folks out there. And one of the questions to ask these people is, do you internalize emotional stress? And they go, uh-huh. And then you could go even farther and say, I would suspect that you have really tight hamstrings. And they go, how did you know that? And I go, because we know how the body actually works. People that have really, really dry hands will shut down the emotional center of their head. It's called the limbic region of your brain. It's the emotional center. But it's not just about emotion. The limbic region of your brain is what's responsible for checking out all the functions of the body. It's the self-regulating mechanism for the body. And so if you are creating so much tension by life that your limbic system can't handle it, you'll just put a lid on it. You'll just shut it down. And what that looks like physiologically is your hands get really dry. And so, see, these are all signs. We've just never taken the time to pay attention to it. You know, I always heard growing up, what is it, cold hands? There you go. Where'd that come from? I want to find the person that started that. Because I guarantee you they probably had really bad digestive issues. All right? Okay? There is no such thing as cold hands, warm heart. All right? You have to really pay attention to what's going on in the human body, okay? If you have any kind of issue like this, my goodness, look at what's going on with your nervous system, because it is the core issue. The next thing it says here, we must take caution when we're basing our health on how we feel. Everything that I see, every person that I bump into, I always ask them how they are. And they go, well, I feel good. And I go, well, what does that tell you about how you're functioning? And they look at me just like you're looking at me, like, what? But it's not about the way you feel. And, you know, there are plenty of examples out there. Come on. If you go to a restaurant and you eat food, like my wife and I, we had this wonderful veal cutlet on our honeymoon 10 years ago. No. Yeah, this is right before I started practice. Yeah. But we had Montezuma's Revenge, yeah, all that. So we did not feel well at all. But that was the most healthy thing that could have happened to us. You do not want to suppress that. But if anyone out there has any kind of symptom of the body trying to regulate itself, what do we want to do? We want to shut it down. You're running a fever, 101, and you want to be taking Tylenol or Advil? You have an upset stomach, and so you're going to shut that down. All right, you're having some diarrhea, and you're going to shut that down. And so what you're doing is you're just trying to cork up everything so it can just fester inside of you. That is the worst thing to do. We allow the body to express itself and work through a given situation. Every situation that you go through, especially if you wind up getting some respiratory virus or digestive virus, your body is actually learning. And it needs to learn because these things do not just go away. They stay around, they grow, they wax and wane, they mutate, and your body needs to build up a defense mechanism. It needs a library of data. And if you're constantly interfering with that, what does that really tell you about what the future is going to bring? More of the same. And so we really try to caution people with trying to intervene in a simple situation. You evaluate whether or not that situation is going to be a life-threatening situation or it's just going to be a nuisance. And if it's going to be a nuisance, please, 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 let it run its course. You will receive dividends off of that. So symptoms are the last thing that shows up in any kind of disease process. Think about that. The last thing, not the first. So by the time you get symptoms, your body has run its course in developing all sorts of internalized strategies. And it has developed this mechanism of it just gets larger and larger and larger, and finally it starts to express a symptom. And then if you try to shut that down, you're really not allowing the body to do its job. So look at this, and it says here that symptoms, the last thing to show up in the disease process and the first thing to go away in a healing process. When you feel well, or you feel good, let's don't say well, let's say feel good, does that mean you're healthy? No, not at all. Not at all. Just because you feel good, I've had patients that come in that have had heart attacks, and I said, well, how did you feel before the heart attack? Well, I felt fine. Well, did you have any type of test? And they said, oh, yeah, I pass my physical every year. And I go, so how is that even possible? And the reason why is because this very statement. It's about the symptoms are the last to show and the first to go away, and you've been trying to manage your health on how you feel. That's misleading, and it's also dangerous. So I just want to caution you in the beginning, just sit back and wait for a moment and listen to what your body is actually telling you. And that's why I want to go through this. These are some questions that I ask about health awareness. Like, for instance, where in your body do you hold your stress? That really matters. Let's take a person who holds their stress up in their neck and their shoulders. These are people that spend too much time in the front part of their head. They're called cognitive processors. That's me. Way too much time in your head. So that tells us, what about a person who has really tight hamstrings and a low back issue? Well, we know those people are emotional processors because of where they store the tension. And there have been countless studies. Louise Hay wrote books on this years ago in working with people who suffered, they were going through treatment for cancer. One of the most astounding things I thought was that when she ran across someone who had serious regrets in their life, they all had shoulder complaints. And I thought, well, that's amazing. That's something the way God designed this thing. I would, you wouldn't think on the surface, well, all of this tension that we have inside, it goes somewhere, but it does. And the reason why it goes somewhere is because you don't know how to let go. You've lost the ability to put brakes on the system. The body is a marvelous system of systems, but we treat it as if it's some linear device. You got a headache? Take a pill. Your blood pressure's up? Take a pill. You have diarrhea? Take some liquid or a pill. You have whatever condition, take a pill. And we've created a culture of people that really don't think. And as a result, this is getting worse and worse and worse. And I think everyone would agree that stress has become one of the leading causes. As a matter of fact, the United States Government Health Agency says that over 90% of everything that comes into my office is due to stress. And so what I translate that to is 90% of everything that you deal with is due to stress. So, and then I ask the question, I go, well, just play with me for a moment. If 90% of everything that goes to any doctor is due to stress, why aren't we doing something about stress? And the reason is we don't get it. We just don't get it. Stress is not what's out there. Stress is what you're left with after you have dealt with out there, which means stress is the result of a process, no different than any other condition. So if you learn how to work a better process, you have less stress at the end. And this is something I was talking with a pastor about this over last week. I got a number of pastors that go, pastors tend to be very stressed. They are. I understand. All right, when you didn't have everything given to you, I'm a little stressed. Yeah, but they are. The amount of pressure on our pastors is unbelievable. And so we were talking about the fact that God gives us mercies every day. They're new every day. Well, for good reason. All right? The way we do things, we need to help a little bit, all right, in learning how not to internalize this stuff and allow our bodies to function at a better and a higher level. And that's what we're going to be talking about during this series. What tools have you used to reduce your stress? So this is one of those non-rhetorical questions that typically requires a verbal response. All right? So what do you do? Stretching? Exercise. Exercise is the number one. Last week, they had a study that came out, and these doctors are perplexed. It's a group of people, a colony, a small town, a culture of people off of an island, and I believe it's some island around Greece. And all of these people or the majority of these people are centurions. All right, they're over 100 years of age. And it's like 20% of this population of centurions are over 110 years of age. And what they found that was interesting, I should say, is that they do not exercise at all. All right, they're overweight. They drink wine. They smoke cigars and cigarettes. They spend every afternoon at the local pub. And they're over 100 years of age. So, do I maybe need to move there? No, I don't necessarily. But do you understand? That just does not compute in this culture. We think if you want to live to any length of age, that you need to exercise. You must exercise. You must do your cardiovascular workouts. You must. You have to control your diet. Everything that we have been taught is about trying to control the reactive side of the system. And that is not what gives us what we have at the end. It's the recovery side of the system that determines the outcome. In brain function, the recovery side of the system determines how much space you have in your head to do work. So if you do not utilize the recovery mechanism in your head, then you wind up becoming over-aroused. And if you function in an over-aroused state over a period of time, you will start to create different conditions. Like, for instance, one of the things that we talk about here. Well, we'll do this. On a scale of 1 to 10, where would you rate an average day of stress in your life? Most people I look at, I talk to, I deal with, 7, 8, 9. Very, very stressed all the time. And so the next couple of questions is, well, is money a stress in your life? Most everyone says yes. And just like I was talking in the orchestra this morning, is it really a stress? Or is it a stressor? And it is a stressor. Everything in your life is a stressor. Matter of fact, what we use to help calm people down is actually a stressor. Chocolate. Chocolate is a stressor. All right? But it stimulates certain functions in the body that allows the body to calm down. So whatever you do, it's a stressor. That does not determine whether or not it becomes stress. What determines whether or not it becomes stress is me, you. It's how you function. All right? How many hours, this is the question I wanted to get to, how many hours do you sleep at night? So let's just raise a hand. How many people get 6 hours of sleep? More than 6. Less than 6. All right, how many people get up during the night to go to the bathroom? Oops. Do you know why? Do what? You drank too much. So I'm going to bring a story in. My mother, she passed away a few years ago, and we were sitting with the renal physician, all right, and my mom, and he asked her how she's been doing at night, and she was on 2 different type of diuretics. And she said, well, you know, I go to the bathroom all the time. And he goes, well, how much fluids are you taking? She goes, well, I take, you told me 22 ounces a day. 22 ounces. And he said, well, you need to cut that down. And I could not believe what I was hearing. And, I was very nice. But in my mind, I went, you are a stressor, you are a stressor, you are a stressor, because that is absolutely insanity. And so after my mom passed away, I decided I am going to figure this out. And for 2 years, I pulled research and I studied and I read and I read and I read. And I have boxes of studies that I have read. And after 2 years' time, we have figured this thing out. There are no studies out there directly linking all of this stuff together. But one of the things about being a doctor is you're supposed to go study. You're the guy people come to for solutions, not prescriptions. Solutions, all right? And so we figured it out. When you go to sleep, your brain hopefully slows down. And when your brain slows down to an area of frequency called non-REM delta, that's the lowest. Delta frequencies only occur when you are dead asleep or if you have brain damage. Now, I see them both, all right? But hopefully when your brain slows down, it will drop into delta. Once it gets into delta, it triggers the pituitary gland in your head to release a product. And that product is called vasopressin. And vasopressin is, they used to think, well, what it does is it tells the kidneys to reabsorb all the calcium and all the minerals, and so it can maintain the particle to solution concentration. Anyway, that's only part of what it does. What vasopressin does is it tells the kidneys to not only recycle fluid so that no fluid, now understand this, no fluid goes to the bladder. None. So, you drink a big old Slurpee-sized bottle of water. Notice I didn't say Coke. Bottle of water. And then you go to bed, and if your brain goes to delta, you don't get up. You don't have to go to the bathroom. So going to the bathroom in the middle of the night is an indication that your brain didn't slow down. Right. So here's the biggie associated with that. That did not take that long to figure out. This is what took the 2 years. What happens is just producing vasopressin, is that all that thing does? I mean, is that all we're supposed to be doing? It seems like the body is really magical and mystical, and it does all these different things at the same time. Maybe there's something else going on here. Well, there is. How many people that get up in the middle of the night are vitamin D deficient? Almost every one of them. Now, do you think that that's just a coincidence? You know, I talked to one of my patients. He builds houses. And so he's out in the sun every day. Every day, 10, 12-hour days. So I said, did you have your physical? Yeah. All right, did I check your vitamin D? Yeah. All right, how was it? He goes, I'm vitamin D, I'm low. Now, wait a minute. They say vitamin D, you need to get out in the sunshine. Well, he spends all his life in the sunshine. So why is he vitamin D deficient? And here's the thing that they don't tell you. This is sort of like Paul Harvey's The Rest of the Story. Vitamin D has to be cooked twice before you can use it. It has to be hydroxylated, cooked. We just call it cooked twice. It gets cooked by the liver, and that's during the day. And then it gets cooked by the kidneys, and that's at night. And when you get your blood test, you're not even testing the version that your kidney is producing. You're testing the version that your liver's producing. I thought that was fascinating. We're not even testing the right kind of vitamin D. So we tell people that your vitamin D is fine. But that's not really true. It's not a usable form. So when your kidney starts recycling fluids in the middle of the night because you went into Delta, this is when you make a usable form of vitamin D. And so what does vitamin D do? That was the next big question. What does it do? I mean, what are we told? It has to do with bones. Well, that's only a small piece of the puzzle. That's not what vitamin D does. It has a bigger purpose in your body than just making bones stronger. And the purpose of vitamin D is to trigger the brain to release serotonin. And what is serotonin? The feel-good hormone. How many people are stressed out? And they suffer from, they like to call it affect depression. They're moody. They get the blahs all the time. And the reason why is because their brain's not producing enough serotonin. And so what do we do for them? Well, we give them a medication that's called a serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And we say, well, the problem is you don't have enough serotonin floating around. You're binding too much. So we need to free some of that up. So I've read all these studies on this, and I went, well, I wonder, it's just my nature to question everything. I wonder, is it really that we're binding too much? Or maybe we're not making enough? And I think the answer is pretty obvious when you start studying vitamin D and you start studying the way the body and the brain actually function. More and more people suffer from sleep deprivation. They go to sleep. They may sleep 8 hours. And then they're just dog tired the next day. That is clear evidence that something is not right. Something is amiss. And so then you start questioning, well, how is your sleeping? Oh, well, I guess I sleep fine. Well, do you dream? Oh, all night. Well, guess what? If you get stuck in the dream state, you can't get to the delta state. You won't go there. You'll lie there and dream all night. And you will not get into non-REM sleep because dreaming does not occur in non-REM sleep. It occurs in REM sleep. And so you go through what I call the field of dreams as you go to bed, and then when you wake up, you come back through them. So you dream really 2 times a night. All right? Well, then a doctor presented me with a paper, and he goes, aha, have it, this one. And he says, we go through delta and theta, these frequencies, our dream states and our non-REM sleep, 6 to 7 times a night. And I went, wow, that's fascinating, because I think what he was wanting to do is he was going to say, you know what, I don't think you're right, Dr. Aplin. And I went, thank you for that, because I want to find out why. So then I thought about it, and I went, I wonder how long vasopressin lasts in your body. They call it a half-life. It lasts 30 to 40 minutes. And so for you to adequately produce enough frequency and delta activity so that you can get vasopressin release and vitamin D to work through the system, you have to put it out into the body 6 to 7 times during the night, which is exactly the same when you go in and out theta to delta. Every time you go to delta, it produces it. And they call it a delta burst, and I actually found a study on that one. So it's marvelous how this thing works. It's just that we've never really taken the time to understand it. All right? So how many hours does it take you? Do you get to sleep? Do you have a problem going to sleep? Yeah. All right. These are the people. Do you have a lot of tension in your neck? Yeah. So you're a cognitive processor. I can give you a real fast one. The best thing to do is to go for a walk 10 minutes every night, and you'll start sleeping right. All right? Yeah. It will. And we're going to talk about that in physical stress. But I thought I'd go ahead and give it to you. Look at this next one. What is your belief about health? Do you even have one? What is it? Okay, this is not one of those rhetorical moments, all right? What is it? Is health a commodity? Do we sell it? What is it? Is it the result of a process? Is it something that you can purchase? I think in our culture we've gotten to the point where we almost believe that it's something that you can buy. I can join the health club. I can get my vitamins and go to the health clinic. That's not really health. Everything's focused on the wrong side of the system. So your belief on health is vitally important to really what you're trying to communicate to yourself and the public. All right? What's your belief about illness? Is it something that just sneaks up behind you and jumps on your back? I have this monkey that I don't even know where he came from, but he's in my office. He's not real. All right? But he's hanging up, and he moves from room to room. And we just let the kids do it and the adults. And someone came in and they asked me, they said, "Where'd you get that monkey?" And I said, "I got it off of somebody's back." And he said, "That was a good one from a chiropractor. That was pretty good." So anyway, but what is your belief about illness? Illness is the flip side of health. Illness is the end product of a process. Don't you think God designed this thing to minimize the illness? He did. He absolutely did. But if you do not understand how you are supposed to contribute to this, then you are going to have the increased potential of more illness. So hopefully when you get to the end of this 4-week series, you're going to have a better understanding of what your part in this actually is. The next thing, when your intuition comments to you on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you listen? Most people don't. All right? They just don't. You ever have gut feelings about anything? Do you know those are real? Yeah, they're absolutely real. You have a hunch about something? It's real. Let's go one step further. Have you ever been in a room, hopefully not this one, but you felt like someone was staring at you? They were. They were. All right? Have you ever been at a gathering where someone might walk into the room and you just, I don't know. There's something about that. I don't know. That's real. It's absolutely real. And it's based on electromagnetic radiation. In physics, they call it perturbations. And it's absolutely real. See, your brain emits an electromagnetic field that extends about 12 inches from your head. Your heart creates an electromagnetic field that extends anywhere from 6 to 10 feet away from your body. So if your electromagnetic fields of your heart are in contrast with mine, you literally will feel this. And they have numbers of studies out showing this. It is absolutely marvelous. So when I came across that was one of the things that started me thinking about people who have heart interventions. And so I started doing my own little research in the office as a pilot program on cardiovascular disease. And what we have found out is that there is a lot more to this story that we don't know. Like, for instance, did you know that the heart is the only organ in the human body that actually has dedicated neurons in the head? The neurons are the little nerves in your head, the little things in there that communicate. And the heart is the only organ in the human body that actually has dedicated ones in the brain. And so if you have an intervention, that may be a stent, that may be a bypass surgery, it may be a pacemaker, that's going to cause an issue. And what it does is creates this enormous amount of tension in the emotional center of your head. And what happens if you have too much energy or too much activity in the emotional center of your head? What will it do? And I said this earlier. It will put a lid on it. And so what does that look like in the physiology of the hand? It's dry. So shake the hands of anyone who's had a heart issue and see. All right, we had, I think it's 18 total, and one had not. But that one person was a totally different human being in how they recovered from their heart issue. And I truly believe that was the thing that stopped it. Because our idea is, if we can understand this, we could develop a strategy to stop it. Because here's what we know about people who have heart issues. They have the risk of developing an autoimmune disease after a heart intervention goes through the roof. And they don't know why. Well, if you lose the ability to regulate what's going on in the body, if you've lost the person who's controlling everything down there, watching it over, watching all of this, then you can have this autoimmune disease develop. And that has to do with the limbic center of the brain, the emotional center of the brain. And so dry hands is a really important thing to know about in a person who's had a heart issue. So it's just more interesting things about how our brain and our body actually work. All right? Now, next thing, what is your belief about the body's ability to repair itself? Can it do it? Yes. To what extent? To what extent? I mean, I heard a program this past week talking about this neuroscientist, and she had a massive stroke, massive stroke. And she thought it was interesting, which I found some humor in that. I was like, really? She goes, because who else, how many neuroscientists would want to study the brain from the inside out? And she goes, I had my opportunity. And so I actually lived through my own research. And it took her about 9 years to come back. 9 years. But when you listen to her speak, you'd never know it. You'd never know anything ever happened. There's another scientist out there that she had a massive stroke and lost half of her brain. And she came back. So absolutely, you can come back. But everything they talked about, these two doctors that I was listening to, and their recovery, it was a lot about rest. Rest. You have to rest. And rest is not sleeping. Rest is not zoning out. It's not distraction. Watching NASCAR on television Sunday afternoons, that's not resting. I'm sorry. Okay? No, if you're reading a book, believe it or not, that's not resting. A lot of people read books to go to bed. They prepare to go to bed by reading a book. That's one of the horrible things. It's terrible. All right? Because you're creating the distraction frequency in your brain, and your brain doesn't have time to slow down. And so what happens is your brain just drops when you put the book down, and you've lost everything that was supposed to happen as the brain was slowing down. It's vitally important that we do things in the right way. Okay? Next one, what is your belief about how your thoughts influence the healing process? You ever heard of anybody worrying themselves sick? How does that happen? Come on. You absolutely can do that. Because if the system is running amok up here, it's going to create amok down here. And that's just the way it works. Now, one of the best things to do is learn how to let go and allow the body to repair itself. You're laughing at me. It's like, do what? And why is it hard to do? We think we have to control. And where did that come from? And see, this is the thing that I try to teach doctors. You must ask why. And when someone makes a statement, even if you make it yourself, the first thing that comes after the statement is why. It's not, it's almost like being the little child. Why? Why? Well, you know what? In science, that's what we need. Why? All right? Why do we have to control everything? Because everything around us teaches us that's the way you're supposed to do it. But does that necessarily mean it's real? I mean, like my mother said, if everybody jumps off the cliff, are you jumping with them? I was the one guy fighting against the crowd the whole way. I was swimming upstream all along. She knew this guy's going to be something. I don't know what, he's going to be something. All right? So you have to start questioning these things. We have a culture that does not understand that stress is what's the result of you in the world. It says that stress is the world, and it's not. All right? It says that we have to control all of the physiology of the body. No, we do not. All right? The physiology of the body, God designed this thing to operate in a balanced state. And that balanced state fluctuates. If you're driving on the parkway, your physiology is different than if you're taking a shower. So your body moves in waves. And it's vitally important that you maintain that ability to move in waves. You know, we test something in our practice, it's called heart rate variability. And I know this is a side note, but I think it's vitally important. Heart rate variability, there's a lot of work being done out there on this field of study. And essentially, in street terms, what it means is how much stress can you take? How much can you handle? Because most of the people that I see, they have horrible. Their heart rate variability is tanked. Everything gets on their last nerve. And for good reason. They have no recovery skills. And so when we teach them strategies to change the way their bodies function and the way their brains work, heart rate variability comes back. God designed this thing in a really marvelous way. It's just that we need to understand how we are to participate in maintaining this thing in a balanced state. So the next thing, our goal in this workshop, because we're almost out of time, and this is the same goal that we have in care, and that is 1, reduce the stress on your sympathetics. Your sympathetics is the defense mechanism. You do not have to be in defense all the time. The next thing is we need to stimulate our parasympathetic function as we induce the relaxation response. Relaxation is not something that you just call up. It is a response to something. And so you have to understand how that works. And then the last thing that we want to do is create an environment for healing. You know, I've been very fortunate in my practice in the years that I've been in work. We have seen some absolute miracles that you can't explain. And they happen. And the only thing that I can, attest to is that we are constantly working toward providing an environment for healing. And then God allows the body to heal. But if you're fighting him tooth and nail, it's going to be difficult. It's not to say you can't do it, but it's going to be difficult. So we need to understand that we have to work on this, creating the recovery environment. The last thing, to understand stress and its effects on the body, we look at 3 different things. Next week, we're going to be looking at physical stress. The week after that, we're going to be looking at environmental stress. Environmental stress is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Like one of the newest stressors out there is Wi-Fi. Ooh, that's a bad word. Wi-Fi. Yeah. Unbelievable. Anybody see people walking around with that little Bluetooth thing on their head? Yeah, they're a little, part of the cube, part of the matrix. I'm telling you, those things are bad, B-A-D, bad. Okay? So we're going to be talking about some of that stuff. Environmental stress, we're going to be talking about nutrition. We're going to be talking about water. We're going to be talking about air. All right, and then we're going to get into emotional stress. And that's where we're going to end. And at the end of these, then I'm going to be providing, matter of fact, the ones that come for the last class, there's going to be a book that I've put together that I'm going to be handing out. There's going to be 6 different strategies that you can use. As we go through each class, I'm going to be talking about different strategies that you can use for different things. How many people have a rocking chair at home? Okay, go buy one. Ones that don't, go buy one. You'll understand. All right. All right, anyone have any questions before we wrap up, because we're almost out of time? I did not think we were going to go this long. I was telling my wife, I said, I can do this in 30 minutes. And I go, because this 4-part series is what I teach in my certification course to doctors. I revamped it a little bit. I took some of those crazy words out, and hopefully, Thank you. Okay. But I normally do this class, and it takes about an hour to hour and a half to do the class with the doctors. And so I added some more to it, and hopefully I think it's going to be beneficial to everyone. Okay? Anybody have any questions or any comments? Yes, ma'am. Today was the big idea. Oh, matter of fact, you know what? I'm glad you said that, because I did bring something for someone, because I knew someone was going to ask that question. So here's you a piece of dark chocolate. All right. And here's how you eat it. Yes, there is a way to eat this. You sit, preferably in a rocking chair, and you eat this. It takes 10 minutes to eat one square. You bite off a piece, and you swirl it around in your mouth until it liquefies, and then you swallow it. And then you bite off a piece, swirl it around in your mouth till it liquefies, and you swallow it. It takes about 10 minutes to eat one square of dark chocolate. All right? When I was over in Atlanta, when I was teaching and I was talking to these functional neurologists, we were talking about different cases. And I said, I have this really interesting case. And I said, I thought it out, and I asked the gentleman to do it, and it took him about 3 months to do it. And what I asked him to do, he had Parkinson's, and so he had really bad tremors. And the tremors were affecting his ability to go to sleep. And so I said, well, why don't you start eating dark chocolate before you go to sleep? And it took him about 3 months, and he finally did it. And he came back and he goes, Rich, you're not going to believe this. He said the tremors stopped. So I mentioned that to the functional neurologist, and he sat there for a minute, and he went, chocolate activates the dopamine receptors in your brain, which is the very problem that you have when you have Parkinson's. And so eating dark chocolate will activate the dopamine receptors, and it'll calm down the tremor. Unbelievable. Right. So it's interesting. There's a lot of things out there that you can do to help yourself. Okay? So is that good for today? Eat chocolate. Now, understand, if you buy a chocolate bar, it has to be at least 70% cacao, 70% dark chocolate. It cannot be milk chocolate. Okay? Sorry. And it cannot be the white chocolate. It can't be any of that. All right? And there are 8 squares in a candy bar. That's 8 nights, not 8 bars. 8 nights. All right? So, all right, I have really enjoyed tonight. And so I want to dismiss us. Let's have a prayer, and then we'll go our ways. Father God, thank you so much for this time. Father, thank you for the people that have made it out here for this discussion, and I pray that they'll see the benefit of the information, and they'll provide themselves to you through this information for the next 4 weeks. Thank you, Lord, for all the miracles that you give us each and every day, and thank you for the marvelous way of our bodies and how they work.
You've been listening to Bullpen Science with Dr. Richard Aplin. To learn more about real health solutions to your real health problems, call us at 256-203-9433 or visit us online at envisionchiropractic.com today.